Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Player Prop Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I am your host, Eric Cohen, and boy, are we glad to be on for the NFL Prop Show with these two legends that I share the screen with every week. So let's bring them in right now. We have one of the best prop bettors on the planet, actually the best in my opinion. It is the one, the only Prop Stars, aka Alex Selesnick, and celebrating his 25th year at CBS. There's a great video online. Got to point it out. He is the Fantasy Hall of Famer, the one, the only Dave Richard. Uncle Dave, good to see you. Proppy, good to see you. I just want to say, as far as the championship games, you guys were awesome. A combined 4-1, so you are ready for the Super Bowl. I don't want to talk about my record. It was winless. Bad time for the worst week of the season. But let's get right into some storylines, guys. Super Bowl betting strategies. And Proppy, you and I have kind of talked about this off the air. You like live betting this game. What is your secret to live betting Super Bowl 59?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of things, EC. Well, first off, I think it's important to trust your reads and trust the research you've done. Oftentimes, when a game starts, let's say you have a good read on a play, a prop, or a side, or a total, and things don't go according to plan early, it's easy to abandon ship in that scenario. I think oftentimes it's good to just, take a deep breath, calm down, and often that'll give you additional opportunity or leverage on that particular play if it doesn't go the way you envisioned initially. That being said, I also think it's worth being flexible at the same time. Say you like a prop and early on there's bracket coverage. Then in that case, it may be worth, moving away from or fading a guy you were looking to initially back. So I think just being flexible as well as trusting your reads is very important here. As far as the Super Bowl is concerned, I think it does provide some opportunities to live bet, especially with the Eagles. I think it's important to see what kind of start they get off to. This is a team that plays really well with a lead, but don't play as well from behind. So if the Chiefs get the ball first and score a touchdown, I see that as a tough spot for the Eagles. I may look to make a position in that scenario.
And I feel like this is the worst game to live bet because the books know that people are going to have eyeballs on it and they're going to be looking at it, and they might not necessarily rely on the same type of algorithm that they would in other games. I love the concept of live betting. I think it's one of the areas where the bettor can have an advantage over the odds makers because they use an algorithm and they're not actually in tune with the game. You like to know what the line's going to be when you go into the game. You like to know what you were feeling before the game started, and then act accordingly. Let's lay out the situation that Proppy just said. If the Chiefs score early, you know that line is going to turn into Kansas City -6, -7 right off the bat. That's a great buying opportunity to take Philadelphia, knowing full well the rest of the game, you've got them with a bunch of points that you didn't have after that first drive. Sometimes those live lines overreact, and that's when you can take advantage.
Certainly, that's how I recoup my money after things look like they're going south. You got to live bet it, make it back up. Uncle Dave, I have a question for you. Next one here. As far as novelty props go, are you a fan of those, like betting the coin toss, the anthem, Kendrick Lamar's halftime set? Or are we staying away from that?
They're fun, and I don't mind if you want to. Let's say you had $100 to blow on Super Bowl bets, and you want to put $5, $10 on it. It's fine. It's kind of one of those things where it's 50-50, and as long as the odds are as close to 50-50 as you can get, it's worth taking the chance and just having a little fun with it. I know a buddy who once made a ton of Super Bowl bets, and then whatever the total of all those bets were, he put it on the coin toss, the equal amount. And that way, if he won the coin toss, he was free rolling on all the other bets. Well, he guessed the coin toss wrong, and he ended up having a miserable Super Bowl. Don't be that guy. A little bit on the coin toss, a little bit on the halftime show, that's fine. But everything else, I'd stay away.
Same here. I think Dave summed it up very well. I look to find value and opportunities. And frankly, the novelty props are just that. They're novel, they're fun, they're for entertainment purposes. It's nothing really where you're able to find a consistent edge. So this is categories that I personally stay away from. That being said, this is ultimately supposed to be fun for you. And if you find you want to root for, the duration of the national anthem or whatever, I say go for it.
I can tell you that as much of an action player as I am, I don't believe I've ever bet on the coin toss or who will win the coin toss, nor the national anthem. But hey, we have great props or great analysis at sportsline.com breaking that down. So hey, check that out. All right, last one here. Proppy, I'll start with you. In terms of bankroll allocation for the Super Bowl. Now, you're out on novelty props, so there's 0%. How much of your money as a professional gambler are you dividing between the spread and total, especially being an Eagles fan, and your props?
Frankly, not very much, because I'm not really betting a whole lot on the Super Bowl. This is something I've talked about over the duration of the season, even in the preseason. Once we get to this stage of the NFL season, the Super Bowl, the playoffs, these odds makers are exceptionally sharp. Very difficult to beat a lot of these lines. So my betting volume drastically decreases by this stage of the season. I specialize in player props, and the majority of my action or my handle is going to be bet on player props, but I only have maybe one or two positions in the Super Bowl. I just don't think there's a lot of value to be had. So not a lot of betting volume from me here. If it is, it's probably going to be on a couple player props.
EC, is this the last football game that we're ever going to have the chance to bet on?
I certainly hope not, Uncle Dave.
No. Is this the last sporting event that we're ever going to have the chance to bet on? The answer is no. The point being, there will always be another opportunity for us to find value. It could be basketball, baseball, ping pong at 3 a.m., whatever you're into, there will always be another opportunity. Don't force it. Don't rush it. If it doesn't feel right, take a big step back and just enjoy the game.
No, I can't say. That's great advice from both of you. For me, I'm going to do about 50-50. I'm going to bet some on the spread total and some on the prop, just because, we're breaking them down here, and we'll get your pick, all of your picks for both teams. Check that out. All right. By the way, speaking of picks, go to sportsline.com. We have so many articles and picks and this, that, and the other on there. Use promo code WINNERS for 60% off an annual plan. It's better than any code that you can find on the site. That's $39.99 for a year of Sportsline to get proppies, picks every day, NBA, baseball, football, and more. Use promo code WINNERS for 60% off an annual plan. And check out our Discord, live Discord server where Proppy is in the chat talking there. Coming up next, we're going to talk Eagles props, what to make of Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and more. We'll find out from our experts here on The Early Edge. Welcome back to The Early Edge, and it's time to talk Eagles props. Now, Prop Stars is from the Philadelphia area and grew up an Eagles fan. We have talked about it all year. His team has been on an amazing run. So that means they're going to win, and we're going to play a bunch of overs. Oh, wait a second. That's not how this works. All right, Proppy, what's your first play? And I'm guessing it's probably not an over.
Not an over, EC, and I'm going to go with a full-on contrarian pick here, gentlemen. I'm going to fade Dallas Goedert under 4.5 receptions. First and foremost, we're talking about a great price point here. You can find this at plus money, which is obviously good. Dallas Goedert has been Jalen Hurts' most reliable target through the postseason. He's been very good for the Eagles, who have really lacked the ability to throw the football down the field prior to the NFC Championship. As a result, Goddard's been heavily involved, but 5 receptions is a big number for Goedert. Despite the additional involvement in the postseason, he's been under this in 2 of the 3 previous playoff games and under in 9 of 13 games this season, including the regular season here. So a big number for Goedert here. Also, if we look at the target share of Jalen Hurts, his completions prop is set at 18.5, okay? So 5 receptions is nearly a 27% target share if we look at Hurts's completions. That's significant, way way bigger than Goddard's involvement has been both this year and historically. It's a good matchup against Kansas City, but I have to imagine they've seen the impact he's made. I do think there'll be some adjustments when it comes to covering Dallas Goedert. Also, A.J. Brown is healthy, the healthiest he's been throughout the postseason. We didn't see A.J. Brown basically get targeted at all in the Eagles' first 2 playoff games. I expect him to be the focal point of the passing attack. I just think this number is a reception too high for Goddard. Considering the price point at plus money, this is probably my favorite prop on the board overall.
All right, so before we discuss the Goddard play, Uncle Dave, you have an underplay as well for the Eagles. Let's give that first.
Yeah, and I don't know if I necessarily love that we were going to give an under for Goddard. I said Oddard, and an under for Devontae Smith. But here we go. Devontae Smith under 4.5 catches at -110 from our friends at BetMGM. He's had exactly 4 receptions and exactly 4 targets in each playoff game so far. He's caught 4 or fewer balls in 9 of his past 13 games. I expect the Eagles to lean on the ground game. Duh, they've got Saquon Barkley, and the Chiefs' run defense has been gashed over the last 3 games that their starters have played in. And when they do throw, I'm nervous about how often they will actually get the ball to Smith. We know that their pass rush is going to get pressure on Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's what they do. And I know this offensive line has given up a lot of pass rush pressure, 42.4% in the playoffs. This is a good Chiefs front that's going to get in Jalen Hurts' face. So I went and I studied the numbers, and here we go with this. When Hurts has been pressured in his past 3 games, Smith's target per route run rate is 2.9%. That is unbelievably low. That means he's getting 3 targets every 100 dropbacks. It's ridiculous. For the whole season, that number is 11.8%. So he's never really been Jalen Hurts' guy when he's been pressured. And guess what? Neither's been Dallas Goedert either. So as long as this is the case, as long as Jalen Hurts is getting pressured, I think Devontae Smith won't be a first-read option for Jalen Hurts. I'm taking the under on 4.5 receptions.
All right, so guys, Proppy, I want to start with you on this one. As far as receiving yards go for the props, because you guys both gave out under 4.5, which makes a ton of sense. But that doesn't mean that one of those catches can't be for a lot of yards. Dallas Goedert's prop is 52.5. Devontae Smith's is 51.5. If you were to play over, because we know people love to play overs, especially in the Super Bowl, Proppy, which of those 2 do you like hitting their over receiving yards, if any?
I thought Dave made a tremendous case also for Devontae Smith. I think both are very capable of both staying under their receptions line here. But if we're talking about Dallas Goedert, we're buying him at the top right now. Dallas Goedert's reception line is typically 3.5, and his yards fluctuate between 32 to 38. He's been much more involved in the playoffs here, which is why these numbers have risen. So naturally, I'm inclined to buy high or to sell high, basically, which we're doing with Goedert. Both Goedert and Devontae Smith also share something in common. They both have very deep A dots. Their average depth of target for their position is very deep. So you don't typically see a lot of volume attached to when you're getting targeted down the field. That's more reserved, for guys who are operating closer to the line of scrimmage. So if I had to choose one, it'd be Devontae Smith, just because he's capable of getting a 30 or 40-yard completion, a big chunk play. He can do that on 1 or 2 receptions. So if I had to take an over on Smith or Goedert, it would be Smith's yards.
I'm going to give everybody a homework assignment. Go look at Devontae Smith's numbers against Green Bay. Look at Devontae Smith's numbers against Jacksonville. These are games. How about Cleveland? Those 3 games are examples why it's much harder to fade Smith with yardage than it is with receptions.
And that is the analysis right there. And that's why you study film every week. You've watched more film in 1 week than I've seen in my entire life of game film, probably. The all 22s. Go ahead, Proppy.
I just wanted to also add, we're talking about also one of the lowest volume passing offenses in the NFL. The Eagles they run the football as much as any team in football. So we're talking about maybe 25 dropbacks. That simply does not provide the volume to easily obtain 5 receptions, which is why Dave and I both have chosen to make it a volume-based fade rather than yardage as well. If the Eagles are winning or in a competitive game environment, they are going to run the football as much as any team in football, which we envision them doing in a competitive game.
You know, it's funny you say that, Proppy, because my Eagles prop is Jalen Hurts pass attempts under 27.5, and I got this at minus 105. So Philadelphia is 15-1 since their bye week, and they're 13-0 when Jalen Hurts plays the full game. So we're excluding the Washington game where he got hurt and they lost, and then he sat out the next 2 games in week 17 and 18. In those 13 games, he has thrown 28 or more passes only 3 times. So the under is 10-3, and including 28 twice. So been right on that line. So I'm telling you what, this number for Jalen Hurts, if you think the Eagles are going to keep it competitive and this game is not going to get away from them, the Eagles don't want him throwing more than 25 times. Very simply. Uncle Dave loves to give out, when we do this show every Friday, he loves to give out passing attempts and completions. So in honor of you, Uncle Dave, this is my play in the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts under 27.5 passing attempts. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I looked at it. I didn't take it, but I also looked at Mahomes, and his pass attempts number is 36.5. And I like Mahomes, and I think he's going to have to do a lot for the Chiefs. That's still a really, really high number. So that number and Saquon Barkley's rushing yardage number, we're talking about Eagles. I know a lot of people are looking at that. Both very, very artificially inflated by the odds makers because they don't want to get caught with too low of a number, knowing that a lot of people are going to take those overs. If I had to pick one of those two, it would be the Barkley over.
All right, so I just wanted to ask you about that as well, Proppy. Saquon Barkley. Now, I believe you faded him in the NFC Championship game, and obviously the game flow was what it was, and Barkley had a long run early. I mean, you can't predict that. 112.5 rushing yards against one of the league's top rush defenses, albeit not last week against Buffalo or last game. What do you think about this number for Saquon on his birthday?
I just want to point out that I faded him in the NFC Championship game, and despite having an absolutely brilliant game where he scored 3 touchdowns and went over the century mark, he still stayed under his rushing totals. So that just goes to show how absolutely inflated that line was. So yeah, as far as Barkley in the Super Bowl, we're talking about a massive number here. 112 yards against the Kansas City defense. As Dave mentioned, they have been getting gashed by opposing running backs, but you have to imagine Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid, given 2 weeks, the emphasis is going to be how do we slow down Saquon Barkley. He is the engine of this Eagles offense. If I'm the defensive coordinator, I would rather have Jalen Hurts beat us downfield, force him to do something he's been inconsistent with, something the Eagles have struggled with at times this season is attacking downfield. I think he's going to face a lot of stacked boxes, and I think it's going to be difficult for him. So not something I'm willing to fade because Saquon Barkley, rightfully Offensive Player of the Year, had an MVP caliber season at running back. He's running behind what I believe is the best the best offensive line in the NFL, more than capable of eclipsing this. But if I had to pick, I'd actually go under on Saquon here. I do think the Chiefs are going to sell out to stop him, force Jalen Hurts to beat them down the field. I go under on Barkley's rushing line.
So in the AFC Championship game, I was big on these Travis Kelce stats. I'm thinking, hey, we're going to, Kelce's got this whole streak, and then he had a dud. Can he bounce back, and do our experts have some faith that Travis Kelce's going to go off in the Super Bowl? We'll find out next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Prop Show. And I'll tell you what, Uncle Dave, I gave out in the AFC Championship game a Travis Kelce prop. I mean, he had gone over 70 yards in 15 straight playoff games. So it's a lock. I gave it out for a unit, 1.5 units. And then, well, it didn't go so well, just like the rest of my week. But this week, it's the Super Bowl, and you and Proppy are aligned on Travis Kelce props. Why don't you start us off?
Well, Kelsey saw a lot of man-to-man coverage in that game. Buffalo really did a good job of trying to take him away, and they paid dearly for it with other receivers stepping up in his place. I think the opposite's going to happen. I think Philadelphia, who's played a ton of zone coverage to begin with, will keep doing that to try and eliminate the big, deep play. They don't want Mahomes to beat them 15, 20 yards downfield. They will be content with dink and dunk. And that's why I think we will see a lot of dinking and dunking to Travis Kelce. He'll get a lot of catches. Let's go over at 6.5 receptions. And plus money never hurt nobody. Plus 130 is absolutely perfect here. He's had 7+ grabs in 2 of his past 3 games. Just 8 times in 18 games has he done it. And I'm just banking on that Eagles defense allowing the numbers to come in for Travis Kelce. They'd rather get beat by him and just have the Chiefs slowly move down the field rather than give up a big play to one of the other playmakers in this Kansas City offense. And by the way, I think it's important to note that we've seen Tyler Higbee and Zach Ertz each get 7+ catches against this Philadelphia defense. What's happened in the last 2 weeks? Proppy will know. Eagles fans will know the injury at linebacker, losing to Kobe Dean, is a problem for Philadelphia. Replacing him, it's been more Zach Bond in coverage than anybody else. But I went and I watched that film, EC, and sure enough, when they're in zone coverage, there isn't necessarily a guy that's going to be dialed in on the tight end. The tight end is going to get open anywhere between 4-10 yards downfield. It's an easy completion. More of those are going to be fed to Travis Kelce in this game. I'm a little bit worried about the yardage because I think Kelce will get tackled easily. I don't think he's going to have a ton of yards after the catch, but I think he'll have those catches. So let's take advantage of the plus odds. Kelce over 6.5 receptions, plus 130 is the line I got it at.
And I think it's great opinion there and great take, Dave. So, and I like that. But the yards for me, Proppy, I gave out the stat. I mean, Travis Kelce, it's like 70 yards in a playoff game is a virtual lock minus, the Bills shutting him down. So, especially with what we've seen from Higbee and Ertz, as Dave mentioned, this over 60.5 should be like a 5-unit play from you, right?
Not quite EC, but I do have tremendous conviction in his yardage here. I also love Dave's prop as well on the receptions there. Obviously can't argue with plus money there at 7 receptions, but I do think the yardage is very obtainable if we're talking about 60 yards for Travis Kelce here. Dave mentioned the Eagles' previous couple of games. Look what Zach Ertz did as basically the leading receiver for that Commanders offense. We're talking about this Eagles defense. Dave mentioned no Nakobe Dean. They've struggled covering the middle and the portion of the field, the short and intermediate parts throughout the season. If we're talking about the Eagles' pass defense, it's absolutely elite. Where they really excel is on the boundary and the perimeter, is covering the outside, taking away wide receivers. We've seen tight ends and running backs make an impact and have big games against this Eagles defense. So I totally agree with Dave. I think the Eagles will look to contain the perimeter threats like an Xavier Worthy, more on that shortly, and allow some dinking and dunking, which we know Mahomes will happily take advantage of if that's what's given to him. And we're still talking about Travis Kelce, the best pass catching tight end in NFL history. Still plenty of juice left in the tank. Watching him, I think he's the focal point of Kansas City's offense on Sunday. I think he racks up a ton of receptions and yardage. I like over on all of Kelce's props.
Now, for those of you who watch the show on a weekly basis, you know that I love parlays. This will be in every single. I mean, if Kelce doesn't get 60.5 yards, I'm going down with the ship. All right, maybe I'll play a few things separately. Nonetheless, when I put a parlay in, it's going to have Travis Kelce, one of those 2 props in there. I'll say that. Another prop that I was looking at, and I'm not sure I was looking at attempts instead of yards, but Uncle Dave, Patrick Mahomes rushing attempts. What do we do with that in this game?
You're going to take the over on it because we're counting on Patrick Mahomes to handle a lot of work for the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the over at 5.5, minus 104 is the odds that I found it at. And I would be okay, EC, playing this one at minus 125, no higher than that. But this is the time of the year when Mahomes will do whatever it takes to win, including using his legs. He's been over this mark in each of his past 2 games. In 3 of 4 Super Bowls, he's had 6+ rushing attempts. And he'll have to run. The Eagles defense typically plays zone coverage. We talked about that. They're They're going to get pressure on him. We talked about that. When he's been pressured against zone coverage, that's when he's most likely to scramble. And he had like 70, I want to say it was 77 rush attempts over the course of the season. 27 of them were kneel downs. The other 47 of the 50 were scrambles. That's what we're looking for here, along with a couple of kneel downs too. That's not something that I think we would shy away from when we're trying to get over this number. And so with Patrick Mahomes doing so much for the Chiefs, that'll include him using his legs. I think he'll do what it takes to get over 5.5 rush attempts. Minus 104 all the way up to minus 125.
All right, I respect that. I think that's a fair take. Especially if you think Kansas City's going to win the game, you could see some kneel downs at the end of the game if they're ahead and have the ball late, as we normally see them in the AFC Championship game. All right, so a guy who's been huge for the Chiefs lately, Xavier Worthy, the rookie, has been incredible for them over the last 8 to 10 weeks. So are we buying him in the Super Bowl, Proppy?
We are selling him, and this is something I talk about frequently, selling high, buying low. And I'm going to go under 5.5 receptions for the rookie phenom wide receiver Xavier Worthy here. This is my favorite prop on the Kansas City side for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, we're about to see some rookie-on-rookie violence, and I'm talking about a defensive back on the Eagles named Quinyon Mitchell. With all due respect to Jared Verse, who just won Defensive Rookie of the Year, Quinyon Mitchell should have won this award, in my opinion, and he's been absolutely dominant in the postseason. He's been thrown at 10 times through 3 playoff games, and he's allowed less than 5 completions. You remember Revis Island? We're now entering Quinyon Mitchell Island. This guy is going to be, or already has arrived, as a dominant cornerback, and he is going to be tasked with slowing down Xavier Worthy. The Eagles have an exceptional pass defense, top 3 in EPA allowed per drop back, first in success rate. They will not allow Xavier Worthy to beat them down the field. That's why Dave and I like the Travis Kelce prop as well. So I think Xavier Worthy is going to be in for it. Something, he's gotten away. He's going to have coverage bracketed towards him. Arguably the best cover corner in the NFL right now is Quinyon Mitchell. So I think this is a great spot to basically sell high at 5.5 receptions, which is a tall order in this type of game environment versus this Eagles defense and Quinyon Mitchell.
EC, can I jump in real quick? Mm-hmm. Well, short of anointing Quinyon Mitchell as the greatest cornerback to have ever played football, I'm going to agree with Lollipop on what he's saying here, and I think this is a sharp look. I think a lot of people have seen Xavier Worthy play really well. It's really more like the last 5 or 6 games for Kansas City when the starters have been in there. But again, I'm going to lean on that defensive look that Philadelphia should give. A lot of zone coverage. Worthy has been Kansas City's man beater. His target per route run rate has been 32% against man coverage, 20% against zone coverage. A humongous difference. I think he can get a lot of those short throws. I don't think they'll play a lot of man, so I'm not sure how much of Mitchell he'll even see. But a matter of him getting 6+ catches, that's just something that I have a hard time buying into, especially against zone coverage. It's not what Mahomes has typically done. Unless he throws the ball 60 times, something like that, then you'll see it happen.
All right, I want to talk about my favorite prop in the Super Bowl, and I know, Proppy, you're going to have a lot to say about it. Samaje Perine, over 6.5 receiving yards. All we need is, one catch at minus 118. Guys, I haven't made a 2-unit play all season. This is my first 2-unit play of the season. I'm not trying to get back my losses from the AFC Championship game. I'm going 2 units on Samaje Perine. I see Proppy's look, and it's not good. But let me tell you why I'm going with this. He has a reception in 17 of 19 games. He is over this number in 16 of 19. If you think that Kansas City is going to be behind, as I do, and that Philadelphia, not to spoil our next segment, but that Philadelphia will be ahead the majority of the game, or it will be a back-and-forth game, Perine is going to play on third downs. And especially against zone coverage, I expect to see those dump-off passes from Mahomes to Samaje Perine. In fact, I would play his multiple receptions at plus 150. But for this one, just to be safe, 6.5 yards. In every game except for one, Proppy, that he had a catch this year, it was for longer than 7 yards. He had a catch longer than 7 yards. In every game but one. 17 of 19 games this season. I know it was he got shut out against Houston. I understand that, and he caught the last play against Buffalo. But I believe Samaje Perine will have a multi-catch game in the Super Bowl. Do tell.
EC, it's downright blasphemous that you would make this a 2-unit play, my friend here. We're talking about Samaje Perine hasn't even played 19 games with Kansas City, not to mention you could throw out the regular season here because he's played 21 snaps in the postseason. He's averaging 10 snaps or 10 and a half snaps per game. We're talking about running back reception props. These are by far the most volatile commodity in the prop market. They're not going to be the first read option. They're a check down option. So game script plays such a heavy factor when it comes to running back receiving lines. They're extremely attractive when you look at them, but in reality, they're very difficult to handicap. I think there's very minimal edge, and they're extremely high variance. If you want to look at this as a half-unit play, I could maybe accept that, but as a 2-unit play, EC, I've got to push back here, my man, and this is one that I would personally stay away from.
Yeah, I think 2 units is too many. I think 1 unit might be a little bit too much. Half a unit, 3/4 of a unit. It's a Super Bowl. Maybe you go full unit. Listen, the track record is sterling. We would crave a track record like this. But the Eagles, number 2 in the NFL this season and postseason in defensive EPA to running backs through the air. Number 5 in yards per catch. Number 8 in yards after catch per reception. Do I think he can catch a pass? Yeah. Do I think it's going to go 7 or more yards? It looks like he's done that a lot. So the track record might be a true backbone for how Perine gets it done. 2 units. I agree with Proppy on this one. Just too much. Too rich for my blood, EC.
When you're on the field for 10 snaps, a lot has to go right, and that's before we even talk about Isaiah Pacheco getting healthier and potentially eating into that snap share as well, not to mention how they trust Kareem Hunt. So I could see him playing less than 10 snaps in the Super Bowl. So, to me, it's just a tall order and something that could easily be shut out. So, again, as a 2-unit play, that to me, you have to have tremendous conviction in, and it's just hard to make a compelling case, in my opinion, for Perine here.
But to be fair, being fair to EC, we know that Perine doesn't play on first down, doesn't play on second down. He's a passing downs back. And if EC really does believe that this game is going to be one where Kansas City's chasing points, we will see Perine on the field more than both Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. So those types of snaps, that's when he's going to get those catches and those yardage anyway. So I like the prop, just don't like the 2-unit part of the prop.
All right. Well, I got a little carried away our last show of the season. I couldn't help myself, but good logic and good discussion there. So we're going to make our game picks coming up next here on the Early Edge. Eagles or Chiefs? I have a feeling we're going to be split considering we have an Eagles fan on this program, but we'll find out next here on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and if you haven't had your Samaje Perine fill yet, it's time for game picks. Why not? We don't usually do this on this show. It's normally props, but there's only one game to break down. Proppy, you are from the Philadelphia area. You are a lifelong Eagles fan. In this game, the Eagles are getting 1.5 points against the Chiefs. How are you playing it, straight up or with the points?
I'm a proud Philadelphia Eagles fan, nothing that I shy away from here. And I will mention that I did pick against the Eagles the previous, when they played the Rams. I took the Rams and the points there. So I'm not afraid to bet against my birds here if I see the value here. But I'm going to go with my Philadelphia Eagles on the money line against Kansas City. When we look at Kansas City, what if, the scary thing to me is the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid voodoo, right? Like, what if they didn't have this amazing track record? I think we're looking at potentially an overrated team that did well in the regular season, but never really blew anyone out, was not dominant really at any stretch during the season. And it wouldn't shock me if they're facing a team that absolutely puts it on them in the Philadelphia Eagles. So, again, you can never count out Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The track record is unbelievable. Mahomes, certainly the best quarterback of his generation. They're more than capable of winning anytime they step on the field. But I also think if we look at the potential range of outcomes, the Eagles could absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage, and they can do what they've done all year long, get rolling downhill, and Saquon could get chunk play after chunk play, and then that's just been impossible to stop pretty much when the Eagles get going here. So I think if we look at the totality, the Eagles roster as a whole, it's a more talented. Obviously, I'm excluding the quarterback here, but this Eagles defense is exceptional in all phases. Offensive line, phenomenal. Weapons everywhere. If Jalen Hurts has a solid game, Barkley gets going, I think the Eagles prevail.
Yeah, I mean, Proppy, I think the Eagles are the better team. I mean, you've seen their Jalen Hurts in the last 13 games where he has played the full game. As I mentioned earlier in the show, they're 13-0. For me, Mahomes is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. The Chiefs, a dynasty and everything like that. But there's something about a three-peat. The fact that it's never been done in the Super Bowl era. Even Tom Brady couldn't make it happen. I just think Philadelphia finds a way. Plus, there's a revenge angle from a few years ago. But Uncle Dave, you don't agree with Proppy and me, do you?
Here I am, Mr. Kansas City Chief. And no, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm not a fan of any NFL team. But if Vic Fangio beats Patrick Mahomes, it'll be the first time he does so as a coach or coordinator in 8 tries. That's right. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, together they've taken on Vic Fangio's defenses 8 times. They are 8-0. They've won by 13 or more points 5 of the 8 times. One of the games, Mahomes left early. Somebody else came in. They still blew out Fangio's team. He does not like to blitz that much. It's the number one thing that you've got to try and do against Patrick Mahomes is get him unsettled in the pocket. I don't think they're going to do enough of that, and they're going to play that zone defense behind. The other thing that they can do in Philadelphia is run the ball well, and that's something that Buffalo got away from last week. James Cook took the elevator all the way down to the basement in the fourth quarter last week. Only 2 carries. I think if Buffalo gave the ball more to James Cook, the Bills would be in the Super Bowl and Kansas City wouldn't be here. I think, however, the Chiefs know what Saquon Barkley is all about, and they're going to be able, with 2 weeks rest, to slow him down just enough, especially in the fourth quarter, to make it a competitive game and to give them the dub. Bottom line is this. You've got to choose your team of 4. It's like Survivor Series. Are you going to go with Hurts, Barkley, Nick Sirianni, and Vic Fangio? Or are you going to go with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, and Steve Spagnuolo? And I'm going to take the guys who have won each of the last 2 Super Bowls. They come up with ways to win late. It's what Kansas City has been doing all year long. Give me the Chiefs, -1 to win Super Bowl 59.
All right, fair enough. Now, when it comes to the total there, guys, we're all actually aligned here at under 48.5. I'm saying it's a 23-20 Eagles over Chiefs game. Proppy, any brief analysis as to why you like the under?
Yeah, I lean under for a variety of reasons. The Eagles like to dominate time of possession. I think they want to keep Patrick Mahomes off of the field. I think we see them run the clock and keep that clock moving as well. So I think we'll see maybe less play volume than we're accustomed to. And then I think when Kansas City's on offense, we're going to see Mahomes take advantage of an Eagles defense that's going to keep everything in front of them. And I think he's going to dink and dunk quite a bit, a lot of short area receptions. And I think the clock will be moving as well. So I think, basically we'll see a few less snaps from each team, less play volume. And as a result, I think it'll be a low scoring game, or at least lower scoring than 48 points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think tempo is key. And I think both teams will play at a slower pace. And if they're playing at a slower pace, that means it's more likely for fewer points to be scored because there's more time in between each play through the first 3 quarters of the game. I would also mention that Philadelphia can take some great downfield shots off play action, but I don't know if they're going to be able to connect on those. I think the public is going to be all over the over. I think it's a trap. Cover your ears, Proppy. I know you don't like it when I talk like that, but I think the sharp play is to take the under on the total. And that's honestly, I would take that before I would take the Chiefs or the Eagles in the game.
I agree with you, Dave. I think the under to me is the best bet on a spread or total. For me, I think it will be within a touchdown. So I'd play +7.5 on an alt line, and then play the under. Just throwing that out there. All right, coming up next, talk about other props. I mean, I haven't given out any field goal props in the game yet. So what could I have cooking? Plus, Proppy has a way to make some extra money. How can we do that? Find out next on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and it's time for some different kind of props, not Chiefs specific, not Eagles specific. Proppy, how do we make money on this, like a lot of money on the Super Bowl really fast?
Guys, I love a good lottery ticket, and if we're looking at the Super Bowl, you can get some just unbelievable odds predicting the exact score. So one thing I like to do every Super Bowl is I look at the total, right? And then I look at some potential outcomes that are in line. So, for example, we're working with a 48.5-point total. Let's say you want to take the Eagles to win 27-20, which would be obviously close to that total, certainly within the potential range of outcomes. You can get plus 7,500 odds on something like this. I actually predicted the Rams Super Bowl versus Cincinnati 23-20 that paid plus 5,000. So I'll be sprinkling maybe a little bit on 5 to 7 exact score outcomes.
Well, yours is at plus 7,500. Mine is at plus 10,500. Oh, wait, no, sorry. It's at plus 105. Okay, I don't have one of those crazy bets like Proppy has, but I do think this one's going to happen. I'm expecting a low-scoring game. I'm expecting a close game. You can take a prop that the largest lead of the game will be under 13.5 points at plus 105, not plus 10,500. It's been rare this year when either of these teams have been down by 14 plus points. It's very rare when the Chiefs especially have been up by 14 plus points over the course of the season. And because I expect a close game and a low scoring one, this one is something that just really sits right with me. I think that this is a fun one to take where neither team will be up by more than, say, 10 points in the game.
I think that's a great bet, Dave. And I will get behind that as well. I'm also going to get behind this one. I've given out a field goal prop on every single show that we have done together. So how about total field goal yardage over 116.5? Jake Elliott has multiple field goals in 13 out of 20 games. Harrison Butker, 8 out of 15 games. Both Philadelphia and Kansas City allowing an average of 2 field goal attempts per game. All right, so let's say 116.5 yards. All we need is 3 made field goals at 39 yards apiece. Guys, I think we have 2 great defenses, a lot of stalling in the red zone. I would make this more than a 2-unit play. Okay, I don't want to get carried away here. Samaje Perine will be enough. I love this play, 1 unit on the total field goal yards in Super Bowl 59. All right, let's recap what we have here from our experts. Proppy is on Dallas Goedert under 4.5 receptions at plus 114. Travis Kelce over 60.5 receiving yards at minus 110. Xavier Worthy under 5.5 receptions at minus 128. Uncle Dave is on Devontae Smith under 4.5 receptions at minus 115. Patrick Mahomes over 5.5 rushing attempts at minus 104. And Travis Kelce over 6.5 receptions at plus 130. And I am on Jalen Hurts under 27.5 passing attempts at minus 105. And of course, Samaje Perine over 6.5 receiving yards at minus 118 for 2 units. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor sharing the screen with you all season. We do most of them on YouTube, but I'm glad that we were able to get once here on CBS Sports Network. So for Proppy, a.k.a. Alex Selesnick, and Uncle Dave, a.k.a. Dave Richard, I am Eric Cohen. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big.
Let's hit it big.
Good luck.